Usher is receiving a resurgence in popularity at this current moment, and I think if anyone from his generation deserves it, it's most certainly him. He made viral waves for his Vegas residency, and more importantly, his performance skills. Usher has always been a great performer with a discography of hits that span from R&B to pop to dance to hip-hop, so on paper he seemed like the perfect candidate for the halftime show. And I will say Usher's set list for his show was much more inclusive of some of his deep cuts. It wasn't just for a casual listener, but also an Usher fan. With that being said, I was not crazy about Caught Up being the opener. It seemed like a bit of an oddball choice, but after that the show picked up pace for me, with You Don't Have to Call, a very tiny snippet of Superstar, and then on to Love in This Club, which was a massive hit for him. Eventually, Alicia Keys comes out and she looks gorgeous. Unfortunately, the very first note she sings is a crack in her voice. She sings If I Ain't Got You before diving into their classic hit, My Boo. I will say that through the halfway point of the show, the one thing that was evident is that Usher was singing completely live while doing intense choreo, twirling, skating, moonwalking, which is respectable. However, there were a few parts throughout the show where he wasn't singing much because he was dancing so much and would just riff or ad-lib certain parts. In my eyes, that was the biggest crux with the show at certain parts. And for the Super Bowl, even the best singers and most skilled performers use playback because it's so intense. So I'm not saying Usher needed playback because we know that's not the case, but I do think some parts as a viewer would have been much more enjoyable just to hear him sing fully, without so many pauses. The style and aesthetic of the show was a bit of everything from circus theme to Vegas residency to his classic shirtless R&B performance. He also brought out h.e.r, who played a bit of the guitar and she absolutely killed it. Her aesthetic reminded me a lot of Prince, and I know you can't usually perform entire songs at the halftime show, but I do wish some songs were given more airtime and the pacing was a little better at certain parts. But ultimately, even with that being said, I think Usher's showmanship and talent was on full display at the halftime show. It shows that he also has a plethora of classics that still resonate with the public. And allow me to say this, the only moment that I would consider bad was when Alicia Keys came on and her voice cracked, and then when she sung My Boo, she seemed timid and scared to sing it aloud, likely due to her voice cracking a few seconds earlier. That annoyed me as a fan of her and her earlier work, because you want the people whose music you've enjoyed to do well on stage, obviously, especially for such a defining and large moment with so many eyes on this artist, and obviously, just proficiency in vocals is a large part of the live experience. Especially for an artist like Alicia Keys who sits at the piano and is not dancing or doing heavy choreo. But yeah, that's just like a pet peeve and it sticks out like a sore thumb throughout the show. And it's not like it's the worst thing you'll ever hear, but it's such a major misstep that you can't not notice. Alicia has had some of her memeable vocal moments, but I was hoping that tonight wasn't one of them. Unfortunately, that was not the case. But ultimately, despite his special guests, Usher was the clear star of the show. Of course you can't speak about Usher without thinking of Yeah in a show like this. It would be like having a pizza with no dough. Unfathomable. With a song that's so iconic and high energy, it makes sense why it was the closer. And he brought out Luda and Lil Jon as well as will.i.am to celebrate the final moments of the show. Usher's style of performance was very traditional R&B and pop, and he has so many hits. I do wish some got more airtime and the show wasn't so busy, especially during the beginning, and there was a moment where he could just breathe and sing. But once again, Usher is a GOAT, and I think this halftime show just proves his longevity. And hopefully his new career resurgence and renaissance goes well for him. And the halftime show just felt like a nice moment for the R&B pop royalty that is Usher.